The kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls that morning, the kind I had been making every Sunday for 30 years. My hands worked the dough while steam fogged up the windows, blurring the snow that had started falling overnight. I remember thinking it was peaceful, the way winter mornings should be, quiet and full of promise. Then Sarah walked in. She did not say good morning. She did not smile. She just stood there in the doorway wearing that black sweater I had bought her last Christmas. Her arms folded tight across her chest like she was holding something in, or keeping something out. "We need to talk about your living situation," she said. The words hit me before I understood them. I wiped flour from my hands onto my apron, turned to face her, and tried to read her expression. But Sarah had perfected the art of looking through people instead of at them. "My living situation," I repeated slowly. "You mean my home?" She exhaled through her nose, that sound she made when she thought someone was being difficult. "This is not your home anymore, Margaret. This is our house. Mine and David's. We have been carrying you for 2 years now, and frankly we cannot afford it." I felt my chest tighten. Carrying me. As if I were luggage. As if the woman who raised David, who sat by his bedside through pneumonia and held his hand through his father's funeral, had become a burden too heavy to bear. "Where is David?" I asked quietly. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. "He agrees with me. We both think it would be better if you found somewhere else to stay." The cinnamon rolls were burning. I could smell them turning black in the oven, but I could not move. I just stood there, staring at this woman who had somehow convinced my son that his mother was disposable. "I am 68 years old," I said. "Where exactly do you expect me to go?" Sarah shrugged, actually shrugged like we were discussing restaurant options. "There are places for people like you. Senior homes. Community shelters. We looked into it. There is one downtown that takes walk-ins." Shelter. The word sat between us like something rotten. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "We already packed your things. David is loading the car now." I walked past her, my legs shaking, and found David in the hallway with 2 suitcases. My 2 suitcases. Everything I owned crammed into luggage meant for vacations. "David," I whispered. "Please." He would not look at me. He just picked up the bags and headed toward the front door. His jaw set. His eyes focused on anything but my face. The drive to the shelter took 17 minutes. I know because I counted every single one, watching the clock on the dashboard as my son drove me away from the only home I had left. He did not speak. Sarah sat in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone, sighing occasionally like this whole situation was mildly inconvenient. When we pulled up to the building, a low brick structure with bars on the windows and a flickering sign that read Haven House, I finally found my voice. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. David gripped the steering wheel. His knuckles were white. "'Cause we have to, Mom. We are drowning in debt. Sarah's business failed and we need the space. We need to downsize." "Downsize," I repeated. "Is that what I am now? An extra room you cannot afford?" He flinched but said nothing. Sarah turned around, her smile sharp and cold. "Stop being dramatic, Margaret. People do this all the time. You will be fine. You will probably even make friends." She opened her door, got out, and pulled my suitcases from the trunk. One of them split open, spilling my clothes onto the frozen pavement. My favorite blue cardigan, the photo album from my wedding, the quilt my mother made before she died. Sarah did not help me pick anything up. She just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. David finally got out of the car. He would not meet my eyes as he bent down and shoved my things back into the broken suitcase. When he stood up, he pressed something into my hand. A folded piece of paper. "What is this?" I asked. He did not answer. He just walked back to the car, got in, and started the engine. I stood on the curb, my breath forming clouds in the cold air, and watched them drive away. I did not cry. Could not. The cold had frozen something inside me, something I did not know could freeze. When they were gone, I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was Sarah's, neat and deliberate. "You deserve this." 4 words. That was all. No explanation. No apology. Just a declaration that my life had been weighed, measured, and found worthless. I looked up at Haven House, at the chipped paint and the people huddled near the entrance, and folded the paper carefully. I put it in my coat pocket, picked up my broken suitcase and walked inside. The woman at the front desk had kind eyes. She did not ask questions. She just handed me a clipboard and pointed to a hallway. "Bed 14, she said softly. "Dinner is at 6. I nodded and walked down the narrow corridor, past rows of cots and people who looked just like me. Forgotten. Erased. Still breathing. That night, lying on a thin mattress that smelled like disinfectant, I pulled out the note again. The overhead lights were too bright, fluorescent and buzzing, and somewhere in the dark a woman was crying softly into her pillow. I read the words again. "You deserve this." And for the first time since David left me on that curb, I thought maybe I do. Maybe I deserve something. Just not this. The shelter smelled like boiled cabbage and old soap. Every morning at 6, a loud bell rang through the halls, waking everyone for breakfast. We shuffled to the cafeteria in silence, our faces blank, our bodies moving on autopilot. I learned quickly that people did not talk much here. Talking meant remembering, and remembering hurt too much. But there was one woman who broke that rule. Her name was Lou. She sat across from me on my third morning, dropped her tray onto the table, and studied me with sharp dark eyes. "You used to have money," she said. It was not a question. I looked up startled. "Excuse me." "Your hands," Lou said, nodding toward them. "No calluses. You have not worked hard labor. And your teeth are too straight. Dental work costs money. So yeah, you used to have something." I set down my spoon. I was a nurse for 40 years. I owned a small house before my husband died. Then I moved in with my son. Lou snorted. "Me guess." The son's wife did not like that. I did not answer. I did not need to. She leaned back, shaking her head. "Same story everywhere. Kids grow up, get married, forget where they came from. Then one day you are in the way and suddenly you are out on the street." "It was not like that," I said weakly. Lou raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" Had no answer. Over the next few weeks, Lou and I became something like friends. She taught me how to navigate the shelter, which staff members to avoid, which food lines moved fastest, where to hide if you needed to cry without an audience. "You have got to stop looking so sad," she told me one afternoon. "People here can smell defeat. You wear it like perfume." "I am not defeated," I said. Lou laughed, a dry crackling sound. "Sure you are not." But she was right. I was defeated. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment David handed me that note. Every morning I woke up hoping it had been a nightmare. Never was. Then everything changed on a Tuesday. The shelter was hosting a charity event, some local businessman funding a hot meal program. The place was packed, volunteers everywhere, cameras flashing. I tried to stay out of the way, sitting in the corner with a cup of weak coffee. That was when I saw him collapse. He was standing near the serving table, shaking hands with donors when his face went pale. His eyes rolled back and he crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. Everyone froze. I did not think. My body moved before my brain caught up. I pushed through the crowd, dropped to my knees beside him, and pressed my fingers to his neck. His pulse was faint, irregular. His lips were turning blue. "Someone call an ambulance," I shouted. But no one moved. They just stood there, staring. I tilted his head back, checked his airway, and started compressions. My training came flooding back, 40 years of muscle memory taking over. I counted out loud, steady and firm, ignoring the burning in my arms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. Time stretched and blurred. I did not know if seconds or minutes passed. I just kept going, kept pushing, kept breathing life back into the stranger. Then he gasped. His chest rose. His eyes fluttered open. The room erupted into noise, people shouting, someone crying, the wail of sirens in the distance. I sat back on my heels, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The paramedics arrived and took over, loading him onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him past me, his hand shot out and grabbed mine. His grip was weak but deliberate. "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was rough, barely audible. "Thank you." Then he was gone, disappearing into the back of the ambulance. Lou appeared beside me, pulling me to my feet. "Girl," she said, her eyes wide. "Do you know who that was?" I shook my head. "That was Henry Caldwell. He owns half the real estate in this city. You just saved a very rich man's life." I looked down at my hands, still trembling. "I did not save him for money," I said quietly. "I saved him because no one else would." Lou squeezed my shoulder. "No. But sometimes the universe pays attention to that kind of thing." I did not believe her. Not then. But 3 weeks later, a man in a gray suit appeared at the shelter asking for me. And everything I thought I knew about my life shattered into something I could not have imagined. The man in the gray suit stood in the doorway of the cafeteria, looking painfully out of place among the rows of plastic tables and chipped trays. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his tie perfectly knotted. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a manila folder in the other. "Margaret Hayes," he called out. Every head in the room turned toward me. I set down my coffee slowly, my hands suddenly cold. "Yes," I said. He walked over, his expression unreadable. "My name is Robert Chen. I am an attorney representing the estate of Henry Caldwell." The room went completely silent. Even the kitchen staff stopped clattering dishes. I felt Lou's hand on my arm, steadying me. "Mr. Caldwell passed away 4 days ago," Robert continued. "Before he died, he left specific instructions regarding you." I blinked, unable to process the words. "Instructions? For me?" Robert opened the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten on expensive paper. He read it aloud, his voice steady and clear. "To the woman who gave me a second chance. You did not know who I was. You did not care. You saw a man who needed help and you helped him. In a world that forgets kindness, you remembered. I want to give you what you gave me. A chance to keep living. The property at 428 Riverside Drive is now yours, paid in full. The deed is in your name. I hope it brings you peace. Henry Caldwell." The words echoed in the silence. I stared at Robert, waiting for the punchline, for someone to laugh and say it was a mistake. But no one laughed. "This cannot be real," I whispered. Robert reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "This is the deed," he said. "The house is a 3-bedroom cottage on 2 acres. There are no liens, no mortgages. It is completely yours. He also established a trust fund in your name. Enough to cover property taxes, utilities, and living expenses for the rest of your life." Lou let out a low whistle. Holy hell. I could not breathe. My chest felt too tight, my head too light. I looked around the cafeteria at the faces staring back at me. Some hopeful, some envious, some just empty. "Why me?" I asked. Robert's expression softened. "Because you did not walk past him. Because you did not wait for someone else to act. Because kindness, Mrs. Hayes, is the rarest currency in the world. And Mr. Caldwell believed it should be rewarded." He handed me the folder, the deed, the keys. All of it felt impossibly heavy. "There is one more thing," Robert said. He pulled out a second envelope, this one sealed with wax. "He asked me to give you this personally." I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single handwritten note. "Do not let them tell you what you deserve. You already know." Tears blurred my vision. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my pocket, right next to the one Sarah had written. 2 notes, 2 definitions of deserving. And for the first time in months, I knew which one was true. The house at 428 Riverside Drive was nothing like I expected. It was not grand or imposing. It was simple and perfect. White siding, blue shutters, a wraparound porch overlooking a quiet river. The kind of place where you could breathe without permission. Lou came with me the day I moved in, insisting she needed to see it with her own eyes. "This is unreal," she said, walking through the empty living room. "You went from a cot in a shelter to this in 3 weeks." I set down my single box of belongings, everything I owned in the world, and looked around. The walls were bare, the floors were clean, and the silence was mine. It does not feel real, I admitted. Lou grinned. Better get used to it. But I could not. Not yet. Because even as I stood in this beautiful, impossible gift, I could not stop thinking about the people still at Haven House. The ones who would never get a letter. The ones who were still waiting for someone to see them. That night, I sat on the porch steps and watched the sun set over the river. The air smelled like pine and rain, and for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Oh. The next morning I went back to the shelter. Not to stay but to start something. I found Lou in the cafeteria, pouring coffee for a new arrival. I need your help, I told her. She raised an eyebrow. With what? I'm going to open a place, I said. Real place. Not a shelter. Home. For people like us. People who were thrown away. Lou stared at me for a long moment. Then she set down the coffee pot and smiled. When do we start? It took 6 months to turn the old building on Riverside into what I had imagined. We called it Second Chances, a place where women who had been forgotten could rebuild their lives. We offered job training, counseling, and most importantly, dignity. No one was a case number. No one was pitted. Everyone was seen. The local news picked up the story. Woman who was abandoned at shelter now helps others rebuild. The headline went viral. And that was when Sarah and David saw it. They showed up on a Saturday afternoon, driving a car I did not recognize. Cheaper. Older. The kind of car people drive when money has run out. I was in the garden, planting tomatoes with 3 of the residents, when I saw them walking up the path. Lou noticed them first. You want me to handle this? She asked quietly. I shook my head. Oh. I will talk to them. David reached me first. He looked thinner, older. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he had not been sleeping. Mom, he said. His voice cracked. I stood up, brushing dirt from my hands. Hello, David. Sarah stood a few feet behind him, her arms crossed. She looked furious. We need to talk, she said. I smiled calmly. Then talk. David swallowed hard. We made a mistake. Terrible mistake. We should never have sent you to that shelter. We were scared and desperate and we were wrong. Waited. I did not speak. We lost everything, Sarah added bitterly. The house, the business, all of it. We have been living in a motel for 2 months. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. David stepped closer. Mom, please. We are family. You have all this now. This place, the house, everything. We just need a little help. Just until we get back on our feet. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy I had raised. The one I had loved unconditionally. The one who had handed me a note that said I deserved to be thrown away. I reached into my pocket and pulled out that note. I had kept it all this time, folded and creased but still legible. Do you remember this? I asked. David's face went pale. You gave this to me the day you left me at Haven House, I said quietly. You stood there and watched Sarah tell me I was a burden. You did not say a word. You just drove away. Tears filled his eyes. No. I know, and I am so sorry. I folded the note and put it back in my pocket. I forgive you, David. Really do. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. And it does not mean letting you hurt me again. Sarah's face twisted. So that is it. You are just going to leave us out here. I turned to her. You left me first. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I have a place for people who have been abandoned, I continued. If you want help, you can apply like everyone else. You can go through the program, do the work, and rebuild. But I will not be your safety net. Not anymore. David was crying now, his shoulders shaking. I reached out and touched his arm gently. I hope you find your way, David. Really do. But you will have to do it without using me. Then I turned and walked back to the garden, back to the women who were planting hope in the soil, back to the life I had built from nothing. Lou met me halfway, her eyes shining. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Behind me I heard a car door slam. The engine started. And then they were gone. I knelt back down in the dirt, my hands finding the earth, and I planted another seed. 'Cause that is what we do. We keep planting. We keep growing. We keep living. And we do it for ourselves. Years passed. Second Chances grew. We expanded into 3 buildings, helped hundreds of women, and became a model for programs across the state. I was interviewed, honored, celebrated. But the moment I remember most was not any of that. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when a young woman walked through our doors. She was holding a suitcase and a folded piece of paper. She handed me the paper without speaking. The handwriting was different, but the message was the same. You deserve this. I looked up at her, at the fear and shame in her eyes, and I smiled. Come in, I said. Let me show you what you really deserve. And as I led her inside, into the warmth and the safety and the love we had built, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not because I had proven anyone wrong. Not because I had gotten revenge. But because I had turned the worst moment of my life into the best thing I ever did. And no one, not Sarah, not David, not anyone, could ever take that away from me. The young woman's name was Claire. She was 29 years old, had 2 children, and had been kicked out by her husband after she lost her job. The pattern was always the same. Someone vulnerable, someone disposable, someone told they were not enough. I gave her the tour myself, showing her the dormitory with its clean beds and warm blankets, the kitchen where we taught cooking classes, the computer lab where women learned job skills. Her eyes filled with tears at every room. This is too much, she whispered. I do not deserve this. I stopped walking and turned to face her. That word, I said. Deserve. It is a dangerous word. People use it like a weapon. They tell you what you deserve when they want to control you. But let me tell you something, Claire. You deserve safety. You deserve dignity. You deserve a chance to start over. Not because you earned it, but because you are human. She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I held her while she cried, the way I wished someone had held me that first night at Haven House. Lou appeared with tissues and a cup of tea. First day is always the hardest, she said gently. But it gets better. Promise. Over the next few months, I watched Claire transform. She took computer classes, got her certification in medical billing, and found a job at the hospital. She saved money, found an apartment, and eventually brought her children to live with her. The day she moved out, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You saved my life, she said. I shook my head. Mo. You saved your own life. I just gave you a place to do it. But that was not entirely true. Because watching her walk out those doors, strong and whole and ready to face the world, I realized something. Every woman I helped was also helping me. They were proving that what happened to me was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The media attention grew. We were featured in magazines, on talk shows, in documentaries. People wanted to know how a woman who had been abandoned at a shelter had built an empire of hope. But I never told them the full story. I never mentioned Sarah's note, or the way David had looked through me like I was already gone. Some wounds were private, meant to heal in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. Then one day, 5 years after I had turned them away, David showed up alone. It was early morning. The sun was just rising over the river, painting everything gold. I was sitting on the porch with my coffee when I saw him walking up the path. No car this time. He had walked from town, a 3-mile journey. He looked different. Thinner, grayer, worn down by life in a way that made him look older than his years. But his eyes were clear. Sober. Mom, he said when he reached the bottom step. Can we talk? I gestured to the empty chair beside me. He sat down slowly, like he was not sure he had permission. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, watching the river flow past, listening to the birds wake up. I have been in therapy, he said finally. For 3 years. Trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I let Sarah convince me that you were the problem. I sipped my coffee and waited. She told me you were going to ruin us, he continued. That you were too expensive, too needy, too much. And I believed her because it was easier than standing up to her. I was a coward, Mom. I was weak and selfish, and I threw away the one person who had always loved me. His voice broke. He covered his face with his hands. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know I do not deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you. I set down my coffee cup. Where is Sarah? He lowered his hands. We divorced 2 years ago. She left me for someone with money. I've not seen her since. I nodded slowly. And what do you want, David? Why are you here? He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I do not want anything. I am not here to ask for help or money or a second chance. I just needed to tell you the truth. That you were right. That you deserved better. That I was wrong. The sun had fully risen now, flooding the porch with warm light. I studied my son's face, seeing the boy I had raised beneath the broken man he had become. I forgave you a long time ago, I said quietly. Not because you deserved it, but because carrying anger was too heavy. But forgiveness does not mean trust. And it does not mean going back. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. No. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You want to know what you can do, David? You want to make amends? Yes, he said. Please. I pointed toward the main building. We have a volunteer program. Men and women who were once lost, who want to give back. You could start there. Show up, do the work, help people who are where you left me. Maybe that is how you heal. He looked at the building, then back at me. You would let me do that? I would let you try. He stood up, wiping his eyes. Thank you, Mom. I did not stand. I just nodded. He walked down the steps and headed toward the building. I watched him go, this man who had once been my whole world, who had broken my heart and then spent years picking up the pieces of his own. Lou came out onto the porch with a fresh pot of coffee. That was big of you, she said. Shrugged. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. Even him. She sat down beside me. You think he will stick with it? I do not know. But that is his journey now, not mine. We sat in silence, watching the river, listening to the sounds of women waking up inside, starting another day, taking another step toward healing. David did stick with it. He showed up every Tuesday and Thursday, helping in the kitchen, repairing broken furniture, listening to stories from women who had been abandoned just like I had been. He never asked for recognition. He never expected praise. He just did the work. One day, about 6 months in, I found him sitting in the garden with an elderly woman named Rose. She was crying, telling him about the daughter who had put her on the street. David held her hand and listened. His face full of a pain I recognized. When she finished, he said something I will never forget. I did that to my mother. I threw her away like she was nothing. And I have spent every day since trying to understand how I could have been so cruel. Cannot undo what I did. But I can be here now for you and tell you that you did not deserve it. None of us did. Rose looked at him with wide eyes. Your mother, she whispered. She forgave you. He shook his head. She gave me a chance to be better. That is different than forgiveness. But it is enough. I turned away before he could see me, my chest tight with emotions I could not name. Grief for the years we lost. Hope for the man he was becoming. Gratitude for the journey that had brought us both here. The truth was, I had not just saved myself. I had created a place where healing was possible for everyone. Even the ones who had caused the wounds. That winter, the coldest in 50 years, we opened a second location. The demand was overwhelming. Women were being abandoned at alarming rates, thrown away by families who saw them as burdens instead of blessings. We called the new facility the River House, and it focused specifically on elderly women. We provided medical care, mental health services, and most importantly, community. No one aged alone here. No one was forgotten. The grand opening made national news. I stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, and felt the weight of every story that had led to this moment. 5 years ago, I said, my voice steady, I was left at a shelter with a note that said I deserved it. I was told I was too old, too expensive, too inconvenient. I was made to feel like my life had ended. The crowd was silent. But here is what I learned. Our worth is not determined by the people who throw us away. It is determined by what we build from the ashes. Every woman here, every woman we serve, is proof that it is never too late to start over. That dignity is not something we earn. It is something we claim. The applause was thunderous. But I was not looking at the crowd. I was looking at Lou, standing in the back, tears streaming down her face. The woman who had taught me how to survive in the shelter. The woman who had become my sister in every way that mattered. After the ceremony, a reporter approached me. "Miss Hayes," she said, "there are rumors that your son works here as a volunteer. Is that true?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, he does." "And how does that feel?" she asked. "Having him here after what he did." I thought about it carefully. "Feels like hope," I said. "Because if he can change, if he can face what he did and try to be better, then maybe others can too. Maybe families can heal. Maybe people can learn that love is not conditional." The reporter scribbled notes. "One more question. The note you mentioned, the one that said you deserve to be abandoned. Do you still have it?" Smiled. "Do. Hangs in my office. Right next to the note Henry Caldwell left me. The one that said I deserved a home. 2 pieces of paper, 2 very different truths. Keep them both as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" she asked. "That words have power. And we get to choose which ones we believe." That interview went viral. Within weeks, we received donations from across the country. Women started showing up at our doors, not just seeking help, but wanting to volunteer, wanting to be part of something bigger than their own pain. We expanded again and again. Within 3 years, we had 7 locations across 4 states. We had helped over 2,000 women rebuild their lives. But the moment that meant the most to me came on a random Thursday afternoon. I was in my office, reviewing applications, when David knocked on the door. "Mom," he said, "there is someone here to see you." I looked up. He stepped aside, and a woman walked in. She was in her 70s, elegant and poised, wearing a designer coat and expensive jewelry. Took me a moment to recognize her. Sarah. She looked older, harder, like life had sanded away whatever softness she once pretended to have. But her eyes were the same. Cold and calculating. "Margaret," she said. Her voice was clipped, formal. I stood up slowly. "Sarah. This is unexpected." She glanced around my office, taking in the awards on the walls, the photos of smiling women, the framed newspaper articles. "You have done well for yourself." Waited. I knew she had not come here to congratulate me. She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs. "I need your help." The words hung in the air like smoke. I leaned back in my chair. "Go on." "I am broke," she said flatly. "Completely broke. The man I left David for. He emptied my bank accounts and disappeared. I lost everything. My condo, my car, my savings. I have been living in a motel for 6 months." I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." Her eyes flashed. Are you really?" "Yes," I said honestly. "I am sorry that you are suffering. I would not wish that on anyone." She leaned forward. "Then help me. You have all this. You can afford to give me something. Place to stay, some money, anything." I folded my hands on my desk. "We have a program here, Sarah. For women who need help. You can apply like anyone else." Her face twisted. "You cannot be serious. After everything, you are going to make me beg." "I am not making you do anything," I said calmly. "But I am also not giving you special treatment. If you want help, you go through the program. You do the work. You rebuild like everyone else." She stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I am not like these people. I am not some pathetic charity case." "No," I said quietly. "You are someone who told me I deserved to be thrown away. You are someone who convinced my son to abandon his own mother. You are someone who valued money over people. And now you are learning what that feels like." Her hands clenched into fists. "You are enjoying this." I shook my head. "I am not. I genuinely hope you find your way, Sarah. But I will not enable you. I will not pretend that what you did was okay. If you want to change, if you want to heal, the door is open. But you have to walk through it yourself." She stared at me for a long moment, her chest heaving. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. David appeared a moment later. "You okay?" he asked. He nodded. "I'm fine." He sat down in the chair Sarah had vacated. That must have been hard. It was, I admitted. But it was also necessary. She needs to hit bottom before she can climb back up. We all do. He was quiet for a moment. Do you think she will come back? I do not know. But if she does, we will be here. 'Cause that was what we did. We stayed. We waited. We welcomed. Even the people who had hurt us. Even the ones who did not deserve it. 'Cause maybe that was the whole point. Maybe grace was not about deserving. Maybe it was about choosing to be better than the worst thing someone did to you. Spring came again, and with it, new beginnings. Claire, the young woman I had helped years earlier, came back to volunteer. She brought her 2 children, now teenagers, who helped in the garden and played music for the residents. Lou turned 70 and showed no signs of slowing down. She ran the kitchen like a general, barking orders and hugging people in equal measure. David continued his work, quiet and steady, earning trust one small act at a time. And me, I kept doing what I had always done. I showed up. I listened. I reminded women that their stories were not over. One evening, as the sun set over the river, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and pulled out the 2 notes I kept in my desk drawer. The first one, Sarah's, said simply, "You deserve this." The second one, Henry's, said, "Do not let them tell you what you deserve. You already know." I held them side by side, these 2 pieces of paper that had defined the worst and best moments of my life. Then I took out a match. I burned Sarah's note first, watching the paper curl and blacken, the cruel words turning to ash. The smoke rose into the evening air and disappeared. Henry's note I folded carefully and placed in a small frame. I carried it inside and hung it in the main hallway, where every woman who walked through our doors would see it. Because that was the message I wanted them to know. That they already knew what they deserved. They just needed someone to remind them. That night I dreamed of snow. The same snow that had fallen the day David drove me to Haven House. But this time I was not cold. This time I was standing in the warmth, watching it fall from behind a window in a home I had built with my own hands. And when I woke up, I realized something. I was finally free. Not because I had gotten revenge. Not because Sarah had suffered or David had apologized. But because I had stopped letting their choices define my worth. I had taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and turned it into the best thing I ever did. And that, I realized, was the truest form of justice. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just proof that they were wrong. Years later, on my 75th birthday, the women of Second Chances threw me a party. The main hall was decorated with flowers and lights, and tables were piled high with food we had cooked together. David was there, older now, his hair completely gray. He had been volunteering for almost 8 years, and he had become a fixture in the community. The women trusted him, sought his advice, valued his presence. He handed me a small wrapped box. "Happy birthday, Mom." Inside was a photo. It was the 2 of us from when he was 7 years old, standing in front of our old house, my arm around his shoulders, both of us smiling. "I found it in storage," he said quietly. "I wanted you to have it. To remember that I was not always the man who hurt you. That once I knew how to love you." Tears filled my eyes. I remembered David. He hugged me then, really hugged me, and I let myself sink into it. Because forgiveness was not about forgetting. It was about choosing to remember the good along with the bad. Lou tapped her glass, calling for attention. "Beach," she demanded. I stood up, looking around at the faces gathered here. Women of all ages, all backgrounds, all stories. Each one a survivor. Each one a warrior. When I was 68 years old, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to give, nothing left to be. I was wrong. The truth is, life does not end when people abandon you. Transforms. And if you are brave enough, if you are stubborn enough, you can transform it into something beautiful. I raised my glass. To second chances. To all of us who were told we were not enough. We proved them wrong. Not by being perfect, but by refusing to disappear. The room erupted in cheers and applause. As the party continued around me, I slipped outside onto the porch. The river was dark and calm, reflecting the stars above. I thought about the woman I had been 5 years ago, standing in the snow with a broken suitcase and a cruel note. I thought about how far I had come, how much I had built, how many lives had been changed. And I thought about Sarah's words. You deserve this. She had been right. Just not in the way she meant. I did deserve it. All of it. The pain and the healing. The fall and the rise. The ending and the beginning. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the thing that sets you free. And sometimes the people who break you are the ones who teach you how strong you really are. I took a deep breath of the cold night air and smiled. Because I was not that broken woman anymore. I was the woman who had rebuilt herself from ash. And nothing and no one could ever take that away from me.